Hello and welcome to the Night Owl Philanthropy podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones, and in this series I ask charity leaders and change makers to tell us about their why, the purpose, experiences and values that drive their work. Each episode goes beyond campaigns and job titles to uncover the real stories and motivations behind social impact leadership, exploring what it takes to stay resilient, purposeful and compassionate in a demanding sector. Today, we're leaning into those themes through the lens of mental health and wellbeing, and I'm delighted to welcome Jon Manning, founder and CEO of Arthur Ellis Mental Health Foundation, a charity providing practical, compassionate support and training to help people thrive across the UK. Jon, thank you so much for joining me. Let's begin, as always, with that key question. What is your why?
Thanks, Dean. Thanks for having me on as well. It's really nice to talk to you as always. I think that my why is probably similar to others, where it's my own personal experience. Yeah, I had a real negative experience with mental health services for the majority of my life. So I've been so focused on improving those experiences for others, and I continue to access mental health services myself, which we'll probably get into. But having that experience and wanting to improve it that's my purpose.
And can you take us back to the sort of early experiences that shaped your understanding of mental health and struggle in that area?
Yeah, sure. Well, it started really young. I was 5 years old, and there was a series of abusive experiences in that year. It was outside the family. It was in school. It was kind of nobody really knew it was happening. So eventually I came home and I was quite injured from it. And that kind of led to me learning different ways to cope, and eventually I was in a children's mental health setting when I was about 6. And as you can imagine, Dean, like beige walls, there was a two-way mirror. I think there was one of those like typical NHS giraffes that measure your height, and just like a barren room with tissues on the table. So it wasn't kind of like a open up and feel comfortable, and it wasn't that kind of environment, so I didn't. And these issues reoccurred when I was about 16, when I was 18, when I was 24, and ultimately I was able to access some help. I went privately to begin with, and then it was all picked up by the NHS.
Thank you for sharing that. And Arthur Ellis itself, the name of your business it's named after your granddad. They too experienced mental health challenges, perhaps when it wasn't.
Yeah, well, primarily Arthur's also my middle name. So Arthur was my granddad on my dad's side, and he passed away, like, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks before I was born. And then Ellis was on my mum's side, and he was early 70s, West Yorkshire. I guess it was the same everywhere at that time, but his behaviour wasn't really understood. He had something called schizoaffective disorder. If you've ever seen A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe, it was kind of like that without the maths. It was kind of... He was very paranoid and very disruptive for his life. So he was taken away when my mum was 5, and then she never saw him again. So from my perspective of growing up, understanding that, and getting diagnosed with a similar condition to Ellis, I wanted to create an organisation that kind of broke that cycle, or I'm aiming to break that cycle for my family, and aim to get people to access the help they need when they need it. And if we can do that for other families, then I think that my main driver is my own experience for sure. But the disconnect from family is really prominent within our immediate family, and it's just how disruptive mental health can be to not necessarily just the person's life that is going through it, but all of the extremities, their friends, their family, their workplace, their kids, all of it. It's impacted. And I'm a massive believer that everything stems from mental health. Every decision that we make is based on our psychology. And if we have a strong mental health, then we're going to be making better decisions day to day. And I see it all over the place. And that's probably one of the things that I've learned most from other people's experiences or their experiences, is that it's the disruption, but it's also the opportunity and the possibility. If we have a strong level of mental health, then we're more likely to be in a great position to make those decisions. I was primarily raised by my mum, and my mum's very, very empathetic. And I think that whenever we have a level of injustice or see something that is kind of broken or could be improved, we naturally want to go towards that and to try and
That's you and your
improve it,
mum.
to help it. Yeah, yeah. And my sister, to a degree, like just as a family, we're kind of like that. And that drive to kind of fix things and improve things is certainly a big reason behind it, not necessarily to kind of accept that this is the way that it's going to be. I don't know if it's like necessarily, it sounds like maybe arrogant, to pick something up and try and make it better and
Not at
think
all.
that you can make it better. But I certainly thought sort of 8 years ago or something that it's worth a go.
And was there a particular moment 8 years ago when you thought, I have to do something different? I'm going to sort of build this organisation. What happened around that time specifically, do you think, that triggered a response? Because we can think about doing things. So many things in my life I've thought about doing, but never actually got around to doing it. So what was it, do you think, that triggered that final step?
I was at a traffic light in Oxford.
Right.
And it was quite a pivotal moment, really, because I'd been when I was 22 or so, I moved to the area that I'm in now, which is Milton Keynes. And I went to the GP because I was experiencing low mood like I usually would have. I've just moved to the area, thought it was best to fill them in on, what I was experiencing and stuff. I was put into a waiting list for some talking therapy. So that waiting list ended up being about 4 years. And year 2, year 3-ish, I was in such a bad way. So I think by the age of 24, I was kind of drinking so much alcohol and engaging in these behaviours that people turn to when struggling eating or eating too much, all of these other things that you recognise when you're going through something difficult. So I went to the Priory and I paid for an appointment. It was about £400. It was
Wow.
really expensive.
Where is the Priory? Is that local? Is that close by?
They're all over the place, but the one that I went to, you can kind of filter it by what you need help with, which was really useful. And I found one in Oxford and I went to see a psychiatrist, and the experience was transformational. Like you're paying for it, but at the same time, I've never been to an appointment where I've been offered a coffee. But I was offered a coffee. Do you know what I mean? It was just like those small little differences that make you feel comfortable. And the receptionist had a psychology degree, so they were really informative. The psychiatrist who I sat with spent an hour and 10 minutes with me rather than the hour. And just small things like that improve your experience. And I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and PTSD in the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And on the way back, I realised that all of the bits of training that I'd done or ways in which I was looking into helping myself.
Sort of coping mechanisms?
It was more just, it was like searching for answers to how I was feeling and how I would speak to my boss about it and what I could suggest as helpful things, because I'm a fixer. So I wanted to provide solutions, have a conversation where this is what's going on. This is X, Y, and Z of what I need. But I had no idea about that. And all of these workshops and workplace training things that I'd been to and bits of education that I'd done, all of it was to identify people that were unwell, rather than recognising that people are going to be unwell. And how do we provide people with those tools and strategies, like you said? So that's kind of what set off the thought to create something that was slightly different and focus on training the people who might not be too well or in a bad situation. This is how you cope. Do you know what I mean?
We talked at the very beginning about your why. Do you think that your why has evolved over time, maybe from, your initial experiences to that experience you've just described, and even more recently in the last couple of years? Has your why changed and evolved since you started Arthur Ellis to where you are now, do you think?
I'm not sure if it would necessarily... I think it's definitely evolved. I think it's become less focused on teaching people coping strategies and things like that, and more focused, I guess, more concentrated on improving individuals. Like before, it was kind of en masse. We'll train 50 people at a time or teach certain coping strategies to 50 people at a time. Now we operate a one-to-one service.
Okay.
And we're much more concentrated on the individual's experience and the individual's improvement in how they feel.
That's interesting. Has there been anything in your sort of journey so far that surprised you in terms of from the point at which you decided Arthur Ellis was going to be a thing to where we are now? I think it's like 9 years in total.
Yeah, it's about 9 years, yeah. But the first couple of years was, if I'm honest, trying to figure out what I needed to do and how it needed to be shaped and all of those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
Once we started the one-to-one service, it was quite pivotal because we started the one-to-one service 6 months before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that was probably the September or so. I think we might have started to see 1 or 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
And then COVID hit in March. So you talk about sort of surprises. We started getting, the same amount of clients we were expecting a month every day.
Wow. And that was right from the beginning of COVID, or sort of a little bit further into that period? When did that start to happen?
It was the 5th of March because
Right.
I was on my way to Dorset for my birthday, and my phone started going crazy. So that was, and the amount of referrals that we began to get the second year was about 1,400 referrals.
Wow.
What's most surprising to me about that, and I'm going around the houses a little bit, but it's people's willingness to get help. People are crying out for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the accessibility issue that I think people are facing, and we risk people developing a lot of hopelessness if services aren't up to scratch and there for people when they need it. What's the point in reaching out to a 4-year waiting list? What is the point?
What's the life going to be like in 4 years? That's
exactly. Yeah. You're probably not going to be experiencing what you're experiencing now. You need this help now in case it happens again. So yeah, the level of need, I suppose, is always surprising for me. But the willingness to get help is a real thing to be, optimistic about.
Yeah. And for listeners who don't know you yet, or may not have heard of you before, how do you tend to introduce yourself and the work of Arthur Ellis Mental Health Foundation? What would you say to people?
Primarily, we're a charity, a registered charity that improves access for people who need support for their mental health or well-being. So we run a one-to-one service that is operating without a waiting list or without any thresholds. So anyone of any age, from the age of 8 years old, can access help.
Wow! So from quite a young age, and in terms of the age range, is it from 8 all the way up to 88 or beyond?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think our and we do provide support younger than that. Being an online charity, we can support anyone in any place. So majority of our people that we support are in Milton Keynes, but we have national ambitions. We want to be a national service for anyone who needs it. And from the younger children perspective, we can't really do that online, and we wouldn't really try it. So we have physical play therapy that we can conduct in schools and things like that, or at home and in mutual settings for children as young as 4. So yeah, and I think our oldest client has been about 96. So yeah, it really varies, and the practitioners that work with us get a huge amount of experience from dealing with a teenager through to dealing with someone who's in their mid-30s. It's really good, really good.
And aside from giving up your valuable time for our interview today, what's your day looked like today? For listeners who aren't listening to this when it's initially released, we're in the early part of January, which, funny enough, I think on the 6th of January is quite a significant date from a mental health perspective. I think we refer to this date as blue something. I can't remember exactly what it is. I think the 6th of January is the darkest day of the year for a lot of people. They've just come back from Christmas and New Year having had a great time back into the throes of work and everything that involves. But what's your day looked like today so far?
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I don't know about you, Dean, but I've been really looking forward to get back into a routine after Christmas.
Me too.
Because routine and stuff is my stability, and
It's a safe place.
my day might not necessarily be too normal because I have, based on my positive coping strategies related to my condition, I have medications that I take and a variety of different practices that I do and things like that. So I woke up today about 4 o'clock unintentionally, just because I was awake, and started work about 7. So I generally go for a walk in the morning. So for about 45 minutes, I'll go for a sort of 2.5-3 mile walk around where I live.
I know you've got a cat prior to the interview starting, a cat appeared on the screen. So you've got a cat. Do you have a dog that you take dog for a walk at that time of the morning?
No, I just walk by myself. Yeah, I just whack some music on or listen to a podcast, or if I'm in a real good mood, I'll listen to the news. just to ruin my mood,
Yeah.
basically, before the day starts. But and then I'll start sort of turning my laptop on and stuff about 7. There are a variety of meetings, phone calls, catching up with the team. Meetings are often at home, so I work from home generally, but I go out generally every day to at least one meeting. Then I will go to the gym at some point in the afternoon if I've got a bit of a clear diary, wind up about 6, and then, the evening's mine. I'll cook dinner and brush my teeth and go to bed, and it all sort of starts again.
Sounds good. So just going back to Arthur Ellis, and this is a focus on your leadership, starting something, building something from nothing, essentially. Can you take us back to the early days when Arthur Ellis was just getting started? What did it look like on day one? What did everything look like on day one of Arthur Ellis?
Day one, I think, was the 7th of November.
Day before my birthday.
Oh, is it? And it was pivotal. I remember the day because I started at something called the NatWest Accelerator.
Oh, yeah.
So NatWest Bank, they operate this kind of accelerator program for entrepreneurs where they run workshops and they have support and they have coaching and stuff like that. So we were on one of the first cohorts of that. I think it was in 2017, way back when. And well, when I say we, it's the royal we, because it was just me. But for 2 years or 18 months or so, we were there, and they were a massive support. I initially did some consultancy work because, like you said, it was from scratch, so there's no investment or anything like that. There was a couple of competition wins where we got the odd bit of money, but I did some consultancy to begin with, and I raised sort of just over £10,000 or something to start us off. And I just did some sort of separate work to begin with. And then with that, I was able to hire a bunch of practitioners of different types to kind of teach me these coping strategies that I was going to put into workshops and training. So the first couple of years was running around and delivering those training programs, to be honest. There were some real sticky moments of not being able to pay bills and defaulted on my mortgage and a variety of things, ate out of community fridges. So the first couple of years were a bit of a whirlwind, but I was really fortunate that I had other sources of income. So I didn't have to get paid by the organisation for the first 5 years or so. I've only recently just transferred into the charity, so I was able to sustain myself, but just for the first couple of years, especially, not very much. I think the lowest our bank account went down to was P.
Right. And
obviously, if you have payroll coming up or, you need to go to Lidl eventually for some food.
Trying to think what you can get for 57p these days.
Yeah. So it got to a point where it was real challenging, and I got resorted to actually selling furniture and things like that out of my house in order to get petrol to go see clients and all of those sorts of things. So it was a real grind, that element. It still is, but it's different now. It's a different type of grind.
Sure, that resonates with a lot of people that are sort of in the early stages of starting up a business, that they feel they've got a mission to kind of achieve. Yeah. I imagine that's what you described this as. And thinking about that mission, what problem in mental health support were you most determined to solve when you set up Arthur Ellis? What was the key area that you wanted to solve? Because quite often when you're setting up a business, it's about problem solving. You talked about being a problem solver yourself. And what was that specific big thing that you wanted to solve and resolve? And apologies if you've touched on a bit of this earlier in the interview.
No, not at all. Well, I think overall, the way that I would describe it is patient experience. When you're approaching, and it's not the same experience for everybody, but for majority, it's like this. You go to your doctors, you fill out a few forms, and you may get diagnosed with something, maybe put on medication. But if you're referred to talking therapies, there's kind of a black hole. You get referred, someone puts you on a waiting list. You may get a phone call, you may get an email, but generally you don't know if someone's received your referral. So you get put into a waiting list, and 2 years' time, you may get a phone call to say your referral's been accepted. But the majority of people are in limbo. Throughout that entire period of time, I was, and I have been since. And once you then do access after that long wait, there's not a lot of choice and things like that. And it was just more to improve the way that people access support, meaning that minimal waiting lists, minimal thresholds, so that there is a service that doesn't just provide CBT, for example, a cognitive behavioural therapy. It could also provide or switch to provide like more of a counselling approach or psychology approach and things like that. So that's really what we were driven to build.
Mm. And in terms of your sort of, you've talked about the challenges that you faced financially in those first couple of years. And again, that's not uncommon for a lot of businesses. And I think a lot of people talk about getting over that 2-year threshold, and then hopefully things start to stabilize. But getting to that point is where most new businesses drop off before that 2-year period. But what would you describe as your biggest barriers, the barriers that you faced in the first couple of years, whether it's sort of funding, your credibility, your own energy, or something else? What were the biggest barriers, do you think?
Yeah, I think it was kind of a track record, like you said about credibility and things like that. Like I was really reliant on relationships. So they were strong, and I'd worked with organisations in the past, so I went to them first. But the challenge was, breaking into new with no track record. It was really difficult, and you have to start at the absolute bottom. Even doing stuff, did quite a bit for free and didn't charge what it was worth at all, and things like that, just to start the ball rolling, build up some momentum. But that was a really tough one. It took that 2 years just to gain enough sustainability.
Interesting. And looking back, is there a decision that you made early on that felt risky at the time, but now you see as quite pivotal in terms of where you are now? Had you not made that decision, perhaps you wouldn't be doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, certainly in those 2 years. So when it got to a point, and if I'm honest, it was so much of a whirlwind and it was such a long time ago. I don't remember how we got into the position, but essentially there was no new clients coming in, and the bank account went down to this 57p. So I had a coffee table and a load of DVDs back when DVDs were a thing. And so I went to trade them in, and I sold my coffee table, and I got about £10 worth of fuel. And that took me to Bedford, where I won a £16,000 contract.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that was sort of make or break, really. And there's been a couple of instances like that.
And talking about that £16,000, did that come to you as you achieved that contract? Did it come straight away? Or you got it in phases, or you get it at the end of your project? How did that work?
Phases, I think it was monthly.
Right, okay. So it gave you some stability.
Great for stability and things like that, but obviously it's divided, so it's a smaller amount every time. So we definitely needed more, but I was able to bring in some support with that and things like that, because obviously I was still voluntary. So I was able to just reinvest all of that back into the organisation for years.
As a founder and CEO, how do you balance being the visionary with the practical realities of governance, finance, which you touched on, and importantly, safeguarding?
Yeah, luckily we have trustees that support as well. So we've got, a really good board and people who help out an awful lot. Got good just friends as well, if I'm honest. So I have a lot of support surrounding me, which I can never fault. It's amazing. How I manage it is partly you've got to be reactive. So you've got to sort of take things as they come, because you can never prepare for everything. I've found, and there's always something that you haven't prepared for that comes out of the woodwork randomly. So yes, or being as reactive as possible and having enough time to be reactive as well. I've sort of said it with safeguarding, if you mentioned safeguarding. So I'm trained up as a designated safeguarding lead. I don't operate in the role, but it helps to give me an understanding. And we also make sure that everyone across the organisation has that lead level training. From my perspective, there's less emphasis because I'm developing the team to take over those particular areas or those particular roles. So it's been a lot more useful as we've grown. Early days, it was just purely sales. It was just, try and get this momentum going with some clients, and then we can build the infrastructure around it. But long story short, I don't have the expertise to do everything. So we need to have support in order to even if it's mentors, coaches, friends, or trusted relationships that you've got. But yeah, generally I do a lot of client work, do a lot of relationship management work, and then there are the odd like sort of quarterly things you've got to do and the governance bits, which really aren't my cup of tea. I'm better at the shiny things and doing things like that. Yeah.
And what have been the sort of steepest learning curves for you as a leader? Things you perhaps didn't know that you needed to know?
So much that I haven't known that I've needed to know.
Yeah.
Loads about
Maybe
people
that's the
management.
best answer to that question.
Yeah, like it's just constant as well. So there's things actively happening like now that are brand new experiences that I wouldn't have known how to manage before.
And you have to have a degree of humility, I think, as a leader to be prepared to accept that and strip back any sort of overconfidence or arrogance that might be attached to being a leader, which sometimes you see in people. But the ability to be humble and as you said, lean on the people that do have that expertise and experience. That's something that's what leadership is about. I think recognizing your own strengths and weaknesses and then referring to those people around you that have the things that you don't have. I think that's a great lesson too.
Yeah. And to a degree, I think that's kind of the role of a CEO, isn't it? It's to gather the right people together in the right direction in order to drive the business or the organization forward. And that's been a big learning curve, is like who are the right people to get on board, and strategy is king as well. I've obviously for the first few years and stuff, I didn't necessarily have a strategy. It was just do stuff to make this a success. That was the strategy. But as soon as we were able to, we did a piece of work around infrastructure, and we did like a transformation program. And we're only small, there's not many of us, and we're in our early days really, but it was so important to make sure that governance and the infrastructure and the strategy and everyone's roles are aligned and all of that sort of stuff. So I would absolutely have done that probably a bit sooner.
Yeah.
If I'm honest.
Yeah.
As soon as we started bringing in 2 or 3 people into the organization, I probably would have had somebody in to have a look at all of our infrastructure and things like that.
And all of that has its own stresses and strains. So how do you look after your own mental health while leading an organization that deals with distress and trauma every day? What do you do? What measures? I mean, you talked about your routine, your daily routine, and I'm very much one for a routine as well. That does help to have a structure to your day. But what sort of things do you do practically to look after your own mental health in that context?
Therapy is a good one. So I have my own therapist that I see weekly, which is really, really useful. And it's tough to find someone that you really gel with. And, after 20 odd years of receiving support, I feel like I've sort of found somebody now. So it takes time. It does take time to find that. The walking and the exercise and stuff for me is so important to manage my stress levels. It's not necessarily a physical thing for me anymore. Exercise is very much a mental health thing for me now, and I think that a lot of people are kind of going that way.
Yeah.
And
why
then
didn't they tell us that before? Why didn't we know that before? That's why. Well, maybe they did.
Yeah, I think we kind of knew it, but you've got to see it in order to act on it sometimes, don't you?
I agree.
Especially with COVID, seeing how low people got and how disruptive it was. I think people have a better value for it now, and really seeing how it can bring you out of those lows. Now more people have experienced them. So yeah, I think it's shifting, and I think it's a really good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I've got my own strategies that I've learned from therapy. So particular ways to do positive self-talk and those sorts of things, not jump into conclusions. I have a few things in place to stop impulse decisions as well. So if I've got to make a decision, I'll generally take a couple of days to do it. And making sure that the people that you work with know that, and can make allowances for that is really important. Obviously, some decisions need to be made quicker.
And that's kind of like setting boundaries for yourself, I suppose, in one way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there needs to be loads of boundaries set with how you operate, and you need to stick to them as well. And yeah, some decisions obviously need to be made within 2 days, and that's fine. But if there's a decision that can wait, I will generally give it some time and reflect on it. So I think to be reflective is one of my strategies to prevent me from going too quick too soon on decisions. So yeah, there's a number of things that I'd say I have to do in order to stay at a reasonable level for the organisation.
And you've obviously got responsibilities as a lead, and Arthur Ellis is an organisation that's grown a team of mentors and professionals from varied backgrounds. How do you create a culture where they feel supported as well as the people they support? You've talked about supporting yourself. How do you ensure that your team also have that feeling of safety, I suppose, in their working environment, so they can then go on and deliver the good support, no doubt, that they offer to your clients and customers?
Yeah, because it's clients, beneficiaries, so it's still a work in progress. Everyone's remote, so that adds an element of a challenge because we don't regularly get together as a team or anything like that. So we've had to have quite a lot of clear methods of communication. So that's changed over the years, and that's shifted, and depending on what systems we're using or what systems we move to, that determines how we're going to communicate as a team. But every day the team are communicating, and it's really quite positive. And from a looking after them perspective, because their jobs are so difficult. Like one of the strategies that I didn't mention that I do is I avoid the referrals that come in. Avoid is maybe not the right word, but I used to have them come through on email.
So just to understand that better, that's removing yourself from the beneficiaries of your services, and in order to protect yourself, but also give ownership and empower your team to take those responsibilities themselves.
Yeah.
Is that the reasons behind that? Are there other reasons?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So now we have support in place, really good colleague who processes all the referrals into the system and things like that into our sort of secure appointment database and stuff like that. So now there's somebody in place and they're managing it really well. Before that, I would have to process all the referrals myself, and I found it very difficult reading every story. Not that there's anything wrong with people going through everything that they were going through and all of that sort of stuff. I don't want people to feel like reading what's going on with people's lives would have an impact on people. That's because of my own vulnerabilities. And after a couple of years of sort of seeing that and stuff, I'm not a trained practitioner. So I really struggled with reading people's stories and then letting it go and not being able to help them myself. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
But it was that. I'm getting emotional now thinking about it, because there's some particular stories that I've read that I just have to hand over and then never sort of find out what happened. And it's really, that's a real challenge, and that I'm not, these practitioners that we have are phenomenal at what they do. And we provide them every month. They get supervision sessions and things like that to firstly check in with them, but also act as like CPD for them to learn new skills and strategies and things like that, manage clients more effectively and drive people's improvement in their mental health. So yeah, we do. It's kind of a supportive culture where people can ask, people can rely on each other, and we're hoping that we can sort of keep that and develop it. But one thing I've learned is that takes a huge amount of effort and time. And
it's ongoing, isn't it? Because people come and go
all the time.
Okay, so we're going to go on to the next section, which focuses on impact, influence, and it's called the wider you. So I don't want you to take offence from that. That obviously doesn't mean the literal wider you. That means everything else is going. So it's impact, influence, and the wider you. And when you look back over the last few years, what do you think you'd say you're most proud of in terms of the impact that Arthur Ellis has had so far?
There's a story that immediately comes to mind, but I do struggle to tell it.
Okay.
So I will try my best, and obviously I'll take names and things like that out. But we did have, we run a summer festival, Dean. So it's at Great Linford Manor Park every year on Bank Holiday weekend, or Bank
Milton
Holiday
Keynes,
Sunday.
that's right, isn't it?
In Milton Keynes, yeah. So it's on Bank Holiday Sunday in August, and we basically there's 5 areas of mental health, or 5 areas of wellbeing that make you feel better. So one of them's exercise, for example. So we rent a park, split the park into these 5 areas, and we have local organisations come to do what they do and allow children, young people, families to engage in their activities. So in the exercise area last year, we had badminton courts set up, we had a football club, we had a gym come and do assault courses, parkour, things like that. People can just engage with for free. It's amazing. So I generally do a little talk at this festival just to thank people for coming and stuff. And at the end of a talk that I did, there was a lady that came up to me and just hugged me, and she said in my ear, "Thanks for saving my granddaughter." And I sort of said I didn't do anything. It's the team, and it's but I appreciate it. And about 10 minutes later, 5 minutes later, there was a little girl that came and tugged at the back of my t-shirt and just said thank you and skipped off. And I checked in because it was a Sunday, I checked in with the team on the Monday just to see if we knew who this girl was. And it turns out that this girl was sexually assaulted quite terribly when she was very young, and she hadn't left the house in 2 years. And our festival was the first time she left the house. And we'd worked with her for 2 years to help her to cope with what she'd experienced.
Mm-hmm.
It was if you talk about impact, that girl, she was 10 when she was at the festival. And she was able to skip up to a man after what she'd been through in a random park and thank him. And that's the impact that we want to have.
What an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. Hopefully that little 10-year-old girl will still be moving forward in a positive way and thriving in the way you've described. Can you share a moment where you thought, yes, this is why we do it. This is why I went through that moment of having 57p in my bank account. A story or a turning point that really stayed with you. And obviously, as you've said previously, keeping anything anonymous that needs to be anonymous.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, there's a young lad that I know of. Don't know very well myself. I've never spoken to him, but I do know the story. It was a young guy, early teens, refused to go to school, and had autism, ADHD, a variety of different conditions that he was struggling with. And he was really struggling to get out of bed. He'd be awake until 4 a.m, gaming, and just completely out of whack, and needed a lot of help.
And I imagine that resonates with so many listeners with children perhaps of that age who are experiencing similar experiences for one reason or another.
Yeah, whether it's school refusal or there were angry outbursts and a variety of things, and often angry outbursts at home because that's where the young person feels safest to let that stuff out. So there's work with parents that needs to be done with the young person to bring everyone aligned and to work together. And so we, being a flexible service, we kind of at the time we adjusted our appointments so they were like 10 minutes a day rather than 50 minutes a week, and that was purely to coax this young person awake at about 11 o'clock in the morning and out of bed. Eventually he was sat at his desk in front of his computer, dressed, ready for the appointments at 11. He ended up getting back into school, ended up going into further education, and in that further education setting, he ended up winning Student of the Year.
Great.
Yeah, like going to like graduation events and things like that, and seeing that transformation, even though that takes years. I don't want to say that it's you have one appointment and then you're doing cartwheels down the street and laughing all the time, but it's a process.
One good story in isolation of so many stories of challenge and success, I imagine. Not necessarily in equal measure, unfortunately, but thank you. That's great. A great story to share, and hopefully that young lad has gone on beyond college to achieve great things. Have you been able to sort of track his activities beyond college, or is that where he's at?
No, not really. We would deal more with the parents for someone that young and stuff as well. But we do, we do keep in touch to a degree. But at the same time, there's something called dependency. And as a supporting organisation, we kind of, it's part of our process to cut ties.
To let go, yeah.
And let go and let people go off. And obviously people can come back to us and we'll be there and all of that sort of stuff. But to have that regular, consistent forever, that's sort of not going to be too supportive of people in the long run. Yeah.
And that's really leads nicely on to the next question, which is it's about measuring how you have an impact on improving people's lives. And I think beyond numbers and outputs, how do you measure? How can you tell whether the work you're doing is having and genuinely improving people's lives?
Yeah. Well, we've done apart from measures, we do have measures. So we do not tests, but kind of like measures. Yeah, questionnaires before and after someone's support.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do it on their first appointment and their last appointment. Last year, the impact that we had on adults was about an increase of about 77% on their wellbeing.
Mm-hmm.
So after 8 sessions, people felt 77% better after receiving some support. So we have those measurements. There are also other measurements, so like attendees at the summer festival, and there are all the general marketing data measurements that we get. But most importantly, we have a channel of communication with our team called Breakthroughs.
Okay.
And that's where people who are working with our clients, or our practitioners are working with our clients, and there's a good news story to be had, or we get a nice bit of feedback or something like that, we share it together anonymized in this group chat, and that gives us a lot more qualitative, sort of tangible experiences that people have got, like from a kid who doesn't feel anxious anymore to standing up to a bully to doing whatever. We do try to capture that as much as we can.
And that's really interesting that you share that within your team, because it's really important that the team feel that they're succeeding what they're doing in order to give them the sort of motivation and keep that momentum going to carry on delivering the good support that they're no doubt delivering. I think that feedback is as important to the trusts and foundations you might succeed in getting funds from, and donors that they might provide funding. It's as important to provide that information to your own direct team. So that's really good that you do that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What I was going to say is it's also down to like how we deal with safeguarding and things like that, because we've got about 1,000 active people under the service that we support.
Right. Wow.
And we'll support sort of 3,500 a year. So we get probably about twice as many safeguarding issues as a typical secondary school or so. There's a lot. The way that we approach that is sometimes we have to make reports that the people that they don't want us to make the report, but we have to, or things like that. So we've really got to manage relationships really well. And again, sharing that back with the team and making sure the communication's there so that beneficiary hasn't got to repeat things or to go through things and repeat stuff. It's just all of that feeds into somebody's experience that they have.
Before founding Arthur Ellis, do you mind if I ask what your professional journey looked like, and how did the roles that you perhaps had prior to starting the business shape the way you lead your team? You've talked about your team, how you kind of strategize, and how you work generally in your business. But there are roles that really kind of informed what you do today and what you did even sort of 9 years ago when the organisation was founded.
Yeah, I think, I was quite heavily in sales.
Okay.
But before then, like, I don't know how far you want me to go back, but I started work around 13. I sold cash in hand, like window cleaning, door to door.
Did you? Right. So you've been an entrepreneur from a young age.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I was just selling the window cleaner. I wasn't actually doing the window cleaning.
Yeah.
But I was just sort of selling it. And so I did that, and also did gardening for a few neighbours and took my dad's lawnmower up and down the street and things like that. Worked in shops. And then I was meant to go to university. I was actually going to go to study prosthetics.
Okay.
To manufacture prosthetics. And I didn't go there, and that was mental health related. There was an issue that I couldn't overcome at that time, and I didn't end up going to open days and different things, so I missed out. And so I got a job in sales. There was just a job in the paper at the time when you used to find jobs in papers. Circled it with a big black pen and went went along to the open day and got the job, and that was in sales, and stayed in sales for sort of 10 years or so, just about. But that kind of turned into, after a while, it turned into like commercial management of contracts and managing teams and those sorts of things. So I think that previous jobs, the energy that needs to go into sales and the structure that needs to go into sales was really useful. Not necessarily just methods around developing relationships makes it sound really manipulative.
No, I know exactly what you mean. There's a strategy behind that relationship building, that there are certain steps that you take, in a bit like dating or anything like that. It's that kind of relationships, isn't it? Yeah.
And like you said earlier on, Dean, in the conversation about like the humility around stuff and being honest if you don't know, and being like, I think is sort of not making sure that you're not the smartest person in the room and things like that. And just, when I was in sales, I was honest if I didn't know, and I got to find out. And
It's
you
an
just go
endearing
through.
quality for anybody on the receiving end of that, I think. It surprises people when people are willing to admit their vulnerabilities and their weaknesses. I think it's an endearing quality that attracts and draws people in, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
So yeah, there's a huge amount of that I've learned around that, and
And that's work. And are there any sort of hobbies or relationships or places that you feel have also helped you become that better leader within the organisation?
yeah, probably. Well, my parents from a young age put me into karate,
Oh, right. Okay.
and I did that for quite a while, and then it kind of transitioned into mixed martial arts
Okay.
for 3-4 years or so.
So there are a lot of people that talk about martial arts having an impact on their way of life. I think
Yeah,
possibly discipline and confidence and how you hold yourself in a situation. What would you say martial arts, how has that contributed to who you are and what you do and how you do it?
definitely discipline,
Mm,
I would say, but also like the respect of others. Like
okay.
there's it was called a dojo. So in this sort of space where you exercise and you train, um, everyone is equal. Like obviously you've got a sensei and you've got like a leader of the group who does get treated a bit differently. But if you judge someone or disrespect somebody or don't show someone the level of respect that is expected of you in that environment,
Mm,
then you get pulled up on it, and you
mm.
will, in that environment, you probably means you're going to fight someone bigger than you. So it's
Like a deterrent in itself, isn't it?
it's a deterrent, absolutely, yeah, definitely. So yeah, it gets really ingrained in you to be
Mm,
non-judgmental, to respect
mm.
everybody, to be disciplined.
You still do that
Not
now,
that, not to
John?
say that that's consistent all the time. Again, it's one of those journey things, but certainly gives you the foundation, I think. It's
And
good.
you still practicing martial arts, mixed martial arts now?
But I haven't done it now for about a year.
Okay.
I moved back into just sort of doing the gym and doing workouts, because the martial arts, I had to travel a bit, and it just got, I don't know, for me, within my own behaviours and how I activate my behaviours rather than struggling to get out of bed, which happens sometimes. I've got to make sure it's as simple as possible to access the
Yeah.
behaviour. So if there's a big drive or something like that, I'm just probably going to end up scrolling and talking myself out of it. So I need to make sure that these things are as easy as possible to access.
You speak publicly about mental health in lots of different settings. I've heard you personally speaking about it in different forums over a number of years, actually, now. What do you think you've learned from telling your story so openly? What have you learned? What do you get from that experience that perhaps nobody else would get?
Firstly, that it's people respect the vulnerability. I guess to lead on from what you were saying earlier on with that, or just now with that humility and the drawing of people into you and things like that. So be engaging in a talk. I've had talks where I haven't felt like they've been, it's been very engaging, and I've never been booed off stage or anything like that. But
Imagine that.
there's always,
You're talking
when you
about mental
finish
health as
something and you
well.
think, oh, I could have done that better. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
not necessarily, not no rotten tomatoes or anything
good.
like that, gunge. But
Well, I'd love
certainly
to go to
I've,
that festival in Spain or Italy where they do throw.
yeah, yeah.
Well, no, that's another story.
So certainly making sure that you're being as vulnerable as possible whilst retaining some privacy,
Mm,
but also it's a story, so it's got to be told as a story and having twists and turns and different things that come out of it, some humour, it's what I talk about, very difficult topics or
mm,
very thought-provoking or whatever it might, whatever someone might take away from it. Making it lighter, making it simpler, and making it as hard-hitting but soft as possible. It's a real balance, and I think that is just a case of getting it done. Like, I was so nervous to begin with,
mm,
talking about my story or talking in
mm,
public at all. I'd never done it.
mm.
And just sort of taking the first 10 seconds, 20 seconds to start, and then it's kind of the nerves and stuff dissipate. So yeah, just getting on with it, going for it, giving yourself 10 seconds, see how it goes, and making sure that you soften a difficult topic. That's kind of the
I
things
suppose
that...
knowing your audience in that context as well is a key part of that as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Like we've done some work with civil engineering companies where it's, massive burly men who, you would probably address or have different examples for within a workshop that you wouldn't have with an organisation in the charitable sector, for example. It's going to be different relevancies for different people, and you've got to really hone in on that.
That's a really nice lead into the next question, which is actually based on the idea of myths and cliches about mental health. And actually, it's becoming, I think, a myth or a cliche that men can't talk about mental health, because I'm aware of lots of groups where men can open up about their feelings and their struggles and challenges. And there seems a real willingness, more so than ever, for men in particular to kind of gravitate towards these organisations, because I think finally men more than women, perhaps, I don't know if this is a sort of like, again, a sort of myth or a cliche, have in the past been less likely to do that. But from your perspective, what are the most unhelpful myths or cliches about mental health that still crop up either in workplaces or in schools? And you mentioned the big burly men thing, but there might be other myths, cliches or stereotypes that aren't helpful when we're talking about mental health.
Yeah, a couple come to mind. I think the first one is like the whole burden thing of, not wanting to talk about it because it's a burden.
On somebody else who's receiving that sharing of information, is that what you mean?
Yeah, so if I was to be going through a variety of things, Dean, and I needed to talk to somebody, I wouldn't talk to you because I wouldn't want to burden you with my problems.
Yeah.
That's something we come across all the time. And that organisation I spoke to I spoke about with the burly men, we actually did a live, and it was kind of like multiple choice. Why would you not want to talk about your mental health? And one of the answers was, I'll be a burden for anyone else. And about 96% of the room said, there's about 100 people in the room, so say 96 out of that said that and selected that. But then the next question was, would you consider a friend talking to you as a burden? And like nobody said yes.
Yeah, that's so
So, I think with mental health, you've got to take a second, and this is why I reflect and stuff so much, is you've got to take a second and try and see things from someone else's perspective. If they were to approach me with this, what would they say? What would they do? Would they be willing to help? And if you think about it with the shoe on the other foot, then of course they generally would. And then the other thing is that mental health is so broad. And I think that the awareness that's been raised around mental health has been very clinical. So anxiety, depression, symptoms, all of those sorts of things. Mental health starts so much earlier than that. Mental health is that first trip to the gym that you miss because you can't be bothered. And that's your mental health who's demotivating you to go to the gym. And I'm using exercise as an example as a lot, but hopefully it's one of those most accessible ones.
You mentioned, John, yourself, that your mental health journey, for want of a better word, I don't know what the other word would be, started, you talked about being 5 years old.
Yeah.
So that's most of your life that you've had that journey. And no doubt that there are so many people who experience the varying different forms of mental health that you've just focused and talked about from an early age, a trigger at some point early in life that has brought about all manner of different experiences beyond that, connected to that one early experience. I don't know where I was going with that, but it's just interesting, isn't it, that we have a relationship with our mental health from a very early age.
We do, yeah, we do. And it's we're being developed, we're absorbing everything we see as well. So we're absorbing our parents' relationship and all of those sorts of things, and all of them play out in adulthood. Our brains aren't fully developed until we're 25, and there's a lot of evidence to say that it carries on after that now as well.
Yeah.
So we're consistently absorbing that information and absorbing how people react to things, how they process information, how they respond, all the time. So that's what I said earlier on, is about mental health being the stem of everything. From accessing things that are healthy for you through to improving relationships, crime as well. Like it's a it's a stem of everything. Nowadays, in particular, if you look at how our behaviours changed, and I often get asked, are we just talking about it more, or are the issues getting worse? And I'd say it's a bit of both. We're talking about it more, but we're talking about it in a clinical respect rather than, I'm struggling because I've not been able to get to the gym this week. How do we make adjustments in the workplace to improve that, rather than waiting until we're depressed, sussing out the symptoms and addressing it then? I think that we can do a lot better as a country and do a lot better by doing a lot earlier.
That's a really nice hook onto the next question, which is, if you could change one thing in the UK's approach to mental health support tomorrow, whether that's policy, funding, or culture, and I think you touched on culture there briefly, what would you change first and why?
First would be prioritising and incentivising the right types of behaviour. We have been marketed to so much towards things that are unhealthy for us, whether it's sort of consumerism, whether it's food, greed, and all of these sorts of things. And I'm definitely a culprit of that. But these things, the unhealthy things for us in society are being made more accessible. And it's almost like the healthy things for us are made less cool.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
The first thing
mainly
would be
financial restrictions and barriers, really, isn't it? At the expense of the good things over the things that aren't so good for us.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think if I don't, this is just something off the top of my head. It's probably a good job I'm never going to be Prime Minister. But you could, as part of NHS preventative work, as part of our national insurance contributions, we may be able to get a gym membership. So everybody has access to somewhere nearby that they can go to, or even incentivizes for exercise, incentivizations for incentives for doing things like meditation and things like that, giving people the time to look after themselves. I think that's what we're missing, and making sure that those things that are designed to look after ourselves are right in front of our noses when we need them. I did learn that in Japan, people really value healthy food because they're taught from a young age that healthy food is amazing. And that's a cultural thing. We don't do the same for these 5 areas of behaviour that we know will make everyone healthier. We just let them off into the world. And
I think you're right. I think we're creatures of habit, aren't we, as human beings? And so if we can instill good habits early on, it's actually really difficult to get out of habits. You talked about routine earlier on in the interview, and I think if you can establish those really good habits within a routine, actually that would solve half the problems. I mean, exercise becoming a habit and a routine could be a really fundamental shift in terms of the benefits that you get from that, both physically and obviously from a mental health perspective. I think you're absolutely right. And all of those things that you've spoken about don't necessarily cost a lot of money. It's about behaviour and culture. So that's really interesting in terms of, a shift in policy or in the way we're educated and the focus within education on what's good and bad and what shouldn't be done. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. We do this work. We do this in the workplace. We call it shifting the goalposts forward.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, if your expectation is to wait until you're recognizing symptoms. If you're recognizing symptoms, by definition, that person's already sick. So we're waiting until people are sick in order to react. If we were able to really promote healthy behavior, good behavior, incentivize it, and make it worthwhile people doing and recognizing the benefits and the time and all of those sorts of things, it's a big feat. It's a massive feat because you've got to consider people's childcare, accessibility issues, rural locations, like everything. But I think if there was a shift towards that, people who are really depressed may struggle to access therapy, as an example. It's only when people start to build those behaviours like walking every day or having a bath, doing some drawing, seeing friends, not isolating yourself. It's as soon as those sorts of things start to happen when people start to recover. And if we can normalise those behaviours that aid recovery as part of our day-to-day lives, then we're going to be living a lot more preventatively.
Really interesting. What do you think? This is to focus on charity now, Jon. So what do you think good charity leadership looks like to you, particularly in a mental health context? Obviously, that's where you're coming from with this.
Yeah, I think it's you've got to put your people first. It's hard to do. because there's a real balance between making business decisions and sort of making, especially, I think a lot of people in the charitable sector sacrifice a lot to be in the charitable sector and
I think you're right. Yeah.
to do that level of work for the community. And from my perspective anyway, I eat last. And I think that's kind of something that stuck with me from a leadership perspective is, if we're in a good position, we're stable, we're sustainable, I'm the last person that's going to benefit from that. Because there's people and the team and stuff put in so much that
Is
they
there,
deserve it.
to
Yeah.
counter that slightly, not to be argumentative, is there also an argument to making sure that you are in a good place in order to then put other people in a good place? And how do you get the balance between that? Because obviously I think it's very admirable for anybody to put other people before themselves, but there are circumstances where you have to be strong and resilient and ready for any challenge in order to then enable that within your own team and the people that you work with. Would you agree with that? I'm not, as I said, I'm not being argumentative with that, but there's a balance to be struck there, isn't there? I think.
Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. I was on a podcast once, and they sort of said, "What does leadership mean to you?" And I kind of said that it's a balance, or it's finding a balance between boundaries and sacrifice.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
As a leader, you need to sacrifice certain things, or whether it's losing on certain arguments or driving certain ideas and they might not work and all of those sorts of things. But setting boundaries around those and making sure that if you're going to relinquish some responsibilities to someone else, there's got to be some sort of measure there and all of those sorts of things. Now, I can definitely get better at doing all of this, and it's a work in progress, but I would say that combination of boundaries and sacrifice is where, good leadership sits.
Jon, you had a room full of aspiring charity leaders listening right now. What honest advice would you give them about the realities of leading a charity?
Crikey.
Can we do it?
Yeah, scream at them to get out of the room. Go to a different room. I'd probably say to do it.
Good, yeah.
Probably two things. To begin with, do it. But as soon as you can, get governance in place. And infrastructure. Because the infrastructure is going to help catapult you. And whatever that looks like for the type of organisation or type of charity that it is, it would be surrounding yourself with people who will be willing to help you. And, if you're a small charity, you're probably going to get it for free. You're not going to have to fork out loads in legal fees or anything like that. There is a lot of support out there, and there's a lot of templates out there and things like that. But get your infrastructure in place as soon as you can. And just do it. Give it a go.
And that's, I guess, what you were saying earlier on about sort of moving away from that impulsive nature that you might have to something more strategic, and that governance provides you with that framework to be strategic. Would that be right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it helps to take everyone out along on the ride as well. Because I for years had a strategy in my head for years, and it was a lot more difficult to bring people along with that because they don't see anything tangible in it. Not necessarily anyway. Obviously, you can still take people along with it, but I've been really fortunate enough to have such a fantastic team that will follow me, and I'm forever grateful for that. But it gets to a point where you need to have that properly, solidified across everybody and everyone on the same page and things like that. That only lasts for so long. So I would say, get the infrastructure in place. And if you're thinking about doing something, do it, because you're, in order to be in business, you've got to have a business to start with. So if you're thinking about setting something up, set it up.
Great advice. And from your vantage point, what do you think the charity sector is getting right at the moment when it comes to mental health and well-being? And where is it, do you think, still falling short? And I think that can be from two perspectives, whether it's a charity that specifically deals with mental health and well-being, or charities generally when it comes to mental health and well-being. Because as you quite rightly said, anybody that's joining the charity sector, particularly in a leadership position, and no doubt, I think, sacrificing a lot in their lives to be part of the charity sector. There are lots of rewarding things about being in the charity sector, but it's an area that isn't easy, and it comes with plenty of challenges. And so there are two perspectives, and you can pick or choose one or the other, or you can cover both. It's entirely up to you.
I think what a lot of charities are doing, and generally speaking, not necessarily just mental health charities, but them included, is moving towards more of that preventative action. I'm seeing a lot more people looking at, and organisations in general, not necessarily just the charitable sector, but driving those positive behaviours, driving preventative work around mental health. I think some of the things that we struggle to do, and we do ourselves, is understanding the nature of mental health being cumulative.
Okay.
So, for example, have a GP appointment and you probably won't see the GP again for a while. It's 10 minutes, you're done, you're out, brush your hands off and away you go to go get your prescription or whatever. Mental health, you're most likely going to be working with someone for at least 3 months. And the appointments are more like an hour, including admin time, rather than the 10 minutes. So it becomes a real challenge to make sure that you haven't got waiting lists and all of those sorts of things there. So I would, that's just one thing. I don't know the answer to that, if I'm honest, apart from having a big enough team to distribute clients to. But I think that's one thing that the industry or the organisations within it need to understand, is that if you bring one practitioner in, within a week they're probably going to be full for 3 months, and you just generate a waiting list immediately. So I think we need to invest a lot more in that accessibility as a group, as a collective, and get those waiting lists down, because at the moment they're sort of 3-4 years.
And that leads again nicely onto, it's almost as if you'd seen these questions in advance, but how do you see the relationship between, this is talking about that team and collaborative approach, how do you see the relationship between charities, the NHS and businesses evolving around mental health support?
Well, I think everyone's got to work together, haven't they, in order to accomplish it. Like, we are actively in a mental health crisis. There's 2 million people on waiting lists at the moment in this country, and though all of those 2 million people are struggling day to day to get by, obviously in varying degrees. But all of those people probably, or the majority of them, work. They'll be in workplaces. They're waiting on the NHS. Their workplaces may even have benefits that the colleagues aren't taking up. So, if there's benefits within businesses that people can access rather than going to the NHS to alleviate some of those waits for other people, then we need to utilise those things. The lack of utilisation for employee benefits is astounding, that companies are paying out for. So even just upping your utilisation of those sorts of things, seeing what's available for you for free.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think people aren't using the resources and services that are already made freely available to them? Is it just a culture thing, or what is that?
Well, they might not know about it, so it might be a comms
awareness
thing. So they might not be told about it. I've worked with organisations before who have stuff, but they don't very rarely share it out or inform people. So improving engagement or utilisation in those things would be great. I think, for example, one employee assistance programme in this country has 13 million members. To put that into perspective, if all of those 2 million people in the NHS waiting list had access to that and could go there as their first port of call, that might alleviate a couple of 100,000 people. That's big scale stuff. So utilising what's already in place from the NHS's perspective, I think going more preventative, and it will never happen, but equaling mental health funding with physical health funding, I think would have a huge impact to levels of diabetes, obesity, self-inflicted injuries, all of those sorts of things that the NHS is seeing more and more of.
Even just saying that, John, like when you said perhaps sort of giving mental health and physical health an equal footing, it's amazing that they don't. You just just saying that just seems, when you hear those words, you think, well, why don't they have an equal footing? Because and often physical health issues start with a mental health issue, whether that's lack of mobility because of lack of motivation and just being in the house all the time, agoraphobia, all of it. I can't stress it enough that everything stems from mental health. Absolutely. Everything does. And we need to prioritise it. I completely agree. John, this is your opportunity to put an ask out there in one form or another. So in terms of philanthropists that you might be aware of, that you might be trying to attract their support or put a spotlight on your work, and also businesses who might be listening, or business owners and leaders who might be listening, who want to make a meaningful difference on mental health, what should they be thinking about before they give, and who they give to, and why perhaps would they want to do that to you and to support Arthur Ellis, if that's what you're looking for?
Yeah, thanks, Dean. I would say that we take a different approach to the majority of others. And long story short, if an organisation wants to support any mental health charity, then fantastic. Just go away and do it. We all need the help. It's not necessarily just about Arthur Ellis. But I would say that our approach is different because we look at promoting the positive elements of healthy well-being and healthy mental health,
Mhm.
or positive mental health.
Mhm.
And to have that, a lot of organisations, when they bring somebody in to talk, they'll bring somebody in who's going to share their story, which is incredible, inspiring, motivational, doesn't provide an awful lot of practicality. So I would suggest, if your organisation is going to be engaging with a charity, not only what can you give the charity, but what is that charity going to be able to provide back to you with their expertise, their engagement? How do you get your colleagues involved? Because that is a massive benefit. If colleagues can volunteer, get involved with the community and all of those sorts of things, it gives them a massive boost.
Mm.
It's one of the elements of well-being, volunteering and helping others. So yeah, there's huge benefits, but I would do it properly if you're going to do it at all. I wouldn't necessarily just give money out. I would see what the organisation can do for you at the same time and your people, and get really engaged and embedded together in a partnership.
That's a
So if
really
you're going to do
brave
it,
thing for a charity leader to say, because more often than not, you hear so many times charity leaders saying, yes, we really appreciate the time and the volunteering, but what we really need is your money. But actually what you're saying is not the reverse of that, but ensuring that that really a supporter is fully committed in all ways, I suppose, isn't it? And that ability to engage, to volunteer,
yeah.
to give time, but also to give opportunity, and then give money, rather than the other way around, which is a nice message to give.
Potentially, but that's the thing. Like, we have opportunities for organisations to give us sort of £50 a month up to £500 a month, and as a result of that, we do certain amount of awareness raising within the organisation. So it's always a mutual relationship. But I think if you can not even necessarily just give a monthly, if we can engage with your teams, if we can get them involved in events and all of that sort of stuff, it's going to be worth our while in sort of fundraising. So I wouldn't even say to organisations it necessarily needs to come from their bottom line. If we can engage staff in positive well-being, positive charity events and all those sorts of things, then we'll raise that money anyway that you're going to give to us. But just engage with us in some way that's meaningful, rather than just sort of giving us a check.
What do you think out of all of those options would make the biggest difference to Arthur Ellis at this stage? That's focusing on you and your organisation specifically.
At the moment, we're looking for people to help us get some corporate events off the ground. So any expertise within events and things like that would be great. We are looking for sponsorship for it as well. I think we're looking at having about 140 business people in a room. So it's a good opportunity for any organisations that want to get out there. But for us, it's the fundraising element. It's the engaging teams, engaging people and communities to get to know us a bit more, to understand what support we need, and to have some fun. Like, let's do some fun stuff that, yes, if it raises some money, then great. But I want to enjoy my job, and I want to have fun and not forget all of the negative bits, but enjoy life. We've got an opportunity to do some incredible things with our jobs. So there's so many people unhappy in their work. Like, why don't we try and improve things? We had a corporate client who did a bakery class. It doesn't cost a lot of money or anything like that. It doesn't need to, but it's just improving people's quality of life. And as a result, they're going to have some good mental health.
Yeah, I think that's a great message. Can you give an example of a partnership or piece of support that really unlocks something new for the charity? And that might be something that was really good fun, or the baking project that you talked about. What's the moment that really sort of changed or unlocked something that perhaps you really needed or didn't know you wanted but got as a result of that?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. So we did a piece of work with a well-known coffee company. I don't know if I should mention the names or anything like that. I'm not sure if that's okay, but
I can't see any harm. I'm not being sponsored by any other coffee companies, so it'd be fine.
Yeah, well, there's not many coffee companies in the UK. It's quite a big one. So we did a roadshow of like training. So it was to go around, see all the staff in 8 different locations in the country and all of that sort of stuff. by sitting down with the MD and understanding the costs of training, because they were doing it anyway. So we were kind of like a bolt on to the day rather than the organisation shutting down for us. So I sort of spoke to them and I was sort of out of interest. What do you potentially lose by shutting the business down for a day? And it was about £1 million a day,
Wow.
which was insane. And
Yeah.
that helped dawn on me that, I'm asking companies to shut down so I can talk to all of their staff.
Yeah.
They're going to pay me for it and have costs associated to shutting down. So we created a new service, which is like an internal wellbeing podcast for businesses to use and put on their intranet. It's got all of the strategies in there, tools, people talking about the situations and the circumstances and all that sort of stuff. And that kind of unlocked quite a lot for us because companies can reuse it. They haven't got to shut the business down. It's accessible. That
It sounds
unlocked quite a
really...
lot.
That's great. A great example. It sounds really naive of me to say so, but you really don't take that into account when you're asking businesses to do things and give up time is the expense or cost that they incur as a result of, as you said, pausing any amount of time, let alone a day, an hour of productivity. Yeah, it's a learning lesson for me in itself, a reminder perhaps not to be too demanding on our business partners.
Well, no, absolutely. And obviously everyone's got to get by and all of that sort of stuff. And I appreciate that. But if say a workshop is £1,000, but it costs £1 million to actually do the workshop, it's kind of, it's £1 million and £1,000 in order to actually conduct some training. So if we can, again, make it more accessible, make it more cost effective and make it make sense. And that was something that really dawned on me. One delivers things in the same way. And I get that because it works to a degree, but how can we add some more innovation in so that it can touch more people's lives? And that's ultimately the plan.
Sounds great. We're very gradually creeping towards the end of this interview, which has flown by, which is a good sign, I think. Thinking about the future, when you think 5 or 10 years ahead, what do you hope Arthur Ellis will have achieved in 5 or 10 years, given that you're now 9 years into that journey? Another 10 years ahead, or 5 years ahead even, what do you think that's going to look like for you and the organisation, if all goes well to plan?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our 5-year strategy is to begin improving the support that we can provide to people who come to us directly. And supporting more people who come to us directly, trying our best to make the service as cost effective as possible for anyone who wants to come to us privately. Being a charity, we don't retain any profits. We think about 93% of a session cost goes towards the delivery of that session. 7% goes to the improvement of the organisation and things like that. So we want to be supporting about 20,000 people in 5 years' time.
Right.
A year.
And did you say is it 3,000 to 5,000? Is that what you were saying? Or is it more than that?
3 to 3,500.
3 to 3,500, yeah.
So in the next 5 years, we want to sort of 6 times the size. For that, obviously, there's a huge amount of recruitment. There's a huge amount of scalability work with systems and processes and stuff like that. So that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on and gearing towards.
Great. It's a great aspiration to have. And I've no doubt, given the trajectory you've been on so far, that you'll get as close to that as you possibly can, I'm sure.
Fingers crossed.
I'm going to move on to some very quick, fun questions as we draw the interview to a close. So the first of those quick fire questions is tea or coffee, Jon? What do you prefer?
Coffee.
And
what
how do you
about
take? I'm a coffee early in the morning and a tea mid-morning, and then that's it for caffeine for the rest of the day.
Caffeine by 12. Okay.
Caffeine by 12.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same, but I'll just drink coffee really. But I have 3 sweeteners, and and
does that
either
answer
black
any
or with
goodness you
milk.
get from having sugar?
I know, yeah. So it's I do probably need to sort it out, but I just gradually over the years just keep adding a sweetener. It seems like
Why not?
I just need it more and more. Yeah.
The reason I have coffee early in the morning, I'm an early bird. Very definitely an early bird, but I have tendencies towards being a night owl as well. But what are you, an early bird or a night owl?
A night owl for sure. Yeah, I do. It really changes depending on my mood. But yeah, sometimes I really can't get up in the mornings and I really struggle and I've got to snooze 9-10 times. But other times, like this morning, I'm just wide awake at 4 o'clock. So it really varies. But generally, I would say I prefer to have a late night than an early morning.
And what would be your ideal way to switch off at the end of a long day, Jon? What do you tend to do to kind of bring your working day to a close and sort of have a bit of time to yourself?
I will generally make a personal call
Okay.
So whether that's to like my mum, whether it's to a friend, something like that, I'll have a call to like get back into my personal life and like, start that side of things now. Cause I work from home. So there's not a lot of detachment from work.
Yeah.
So sort of seeing a friend or speaking to a friend or something like that at the end of the workday just re-grounds me into personal rather than professional.
Great idea, great bit of advice actually, in terms of, as you said, sort of re-engaging with you and your own personal life. What's one thing about you that might surprise people who only know you in a professional context?
I I don't know really. I really like rap music.
Do you? Okay, well that's an interesting.
I really do. I'm like the least rapping person ever.
Okay.
Yeah, I really enjoy like Kendrick Lamar, Eminem, all of those like angry rap kind of songs. Really help me through the day sometimes. They're great.
I'm sure there'll be plenty of other people there with you as well.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
can't
well,
be a
it's an
bit of early
interesting.
days Eminem.
Um,
So I think that just to add to the humility thing that we've kind of been mentioning about is that I don't know everything, and we need a lot of support in order to achieve what we want to achieve. Like in 5 years' time, we might be able to support 1% of that waiting list.
Yeah.
That's kind of the reality of our impact. Like we're a small organisation. 20,000 people sounds like a lot, but it's 1%. So if there's anything anyone can do to support us, I am wide open with suggestions, offers of support, different skill sets, all of that sort of stuff. So like I said, it doesn't have to be sort of like cold, hard cash people are giving us, but if I can develop a network of people who might want to volunteer with us to help us achieve our aims, then, I'm open to conversations and that would be fantastic.
Well, I hope this interview goes some way to helping you achieve that, even, the lowest, smallest level. I think you talked about the 1%. That 1% is making a significant difference to people's lives, and that mustn't be forgotten about, however big or small the impact might seem in the context of the wider challenges and problems. And for anyone listening who does want to kind of answer that request and wants to support Arthur Ellis, what's the best way for them to get in touch and sort of be proactive and active in working and supporting you?
Absolutely. The best way is just inquiring on our website. That comes straight through to the core team and I get passed on anything that's relevant for us. So for me, arthurlsmhs.com.
Fantastic. Jon, you've been an absolutely brilliant guest. I think what stands out for me about you is that alongside everything else that you're doing, you're a thoroughly good person, a good human being, and that will get you an awfully long way alongside having a good head on your shoulders as well. And really, really appreciate the time you've given up in such a busy schedule to talk about your work and your thoughts on the work that you do and the impact that you're having. And I'm hoping that when people listen to this, it will resonate and have a positive impact on both you and then those people that you support. So thanks so much for giving up your time. I'm really listening to you. Time has just vanished for some reason, which is obviously it's going to be a great interview. So thank you very much for your time.
Really good talking to you as well, and thank you for yours. And I really appreciate the questions you put together and all of that sort of stuff. So well done, you're ace. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, Jon.